future healthcare workers that will take care of all of us and our loved ones. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate how thankful we are when you show up, because we get to see the face and we get to put the name with the face and with the function. So it's really, really helpful when people show up.
All right, thank you. So on to my report. I just want to report that under accreditation that we are continuing with our process to have ourselves in good shape by the time we have our accreditation visit in February of 2020. And we will be having a mock visit sometime in October to help us prepare for that. We have also adjusted our strategic plan for 2013 to 2020 based upon the feedback that we've gotten from our systems portfolio through HLC to address the recommendations from our key performance indicators so that we will be on track for the site visit in 2020. And then in preparation for this visit, Jill Carlson she reports to the executive team directly so that we all know what our progress is on all of the measures that we've indicated that we need to make some progress on before we get to our visit in February and really before the October visit. The 2019-2020 college catalog is now completely online at catalog.sfcc.edu. This is a really easily searchable and user-friendly catalog, and that was ready for the fall classes that started on August 19th. The School of Science, Health, Engineering, and Math has developed a new initiative called STEM Core for students to start an engineering, computer science, or information technology degree. This is in collaboration with Los Alamos National Laboratory, and successful STEM Core students will be eligible to apply for paid summer internships at LANL or other locations in the U.S., and U.S. veterans are especially encouraged to apply. Ed Warden is the STEM coordinator support specialist as well as the campus cupboard coordinator. I've heard some positive feedback from LANL about this program, so I think this is a really good initiative. NAPA, the supporter of the Automotive Technologies Program, hosted a tool show and raffles for students to purchase or win tools needed for classes at Wise Auto Supply. The Santa Fe Lodgers Association hosted a fundraiser at Meow Wolf to fund scholarships in the Hospitality and Tourism Program. So funds are now available to cover tuition costs for 14 students this fall. Associate Vice President of Student Success formed a task force on our disenrollment practices. Our enrollment numbers were not strong early on in our, as we were tracking them in the earlier parts of our enrollment cycle, and we had a really high number scheduled for disenrollment. And so rather than actually disenroll students at that time, they formed a task force that canceled the July 3rd deadline to drop students and set up a call bank with the help of OIT, which was staffed with volunteers from several different areas of the college. And those volunteers stayed in the evening hours and actually called students who were being dropped for non-payment and talked to them and about their options for paying. And we think that this has really paid off as our enrollment numbers look a whole lot better, and a lot of those people came back. Plus, we received a lot of really positive feedback from students about the phone calls, and they seemed to appreciate that we called them to check on them and everything, so that was really a good thing too. And this is not actually on my report, but we took that initiative a little further, and so as we've started the first week of school, we tried to identify students who had not shown up the first week of classes, and we reached out to them with a phone call just saying, is there anything that we can do to help? And this is being done through advising. We feel like the advisors are uniquely qualified to kind of have that case management approach and really reach out to students so that if their car broke down or their schedule changed or something like that happened, we can connect them with the proper resources that they need to be able to to get going and everything. But they're, basically just, touching base calls to find out if everything's okay and see if there's anything that we can do to reach out and help. So I really want to extend my appreciation to Associate Vice President Ortiz Gallegos and her team. It takes a lot of time and effort to do these things, but they really do pay off, and this is what keeps students coming back to us, and part of what we talk about when we say we want to be a student-centered campus. The dental program held a pinning ceremony for the 2018-19 graduates, which was very nice. STEM Santa Fe founder and executive director Lena German hosted the 7th, 8th, 9th grade girls from northern New Mexico for the Brave X STEM camp at SFCC. Qualified student apps were submitted to the Congressional App Challenge. It seemed like a cool program. And the Witter Fitness Education Center is holding a tennis tournament September 6th through 8th. The deadline is August 30th. There are, under faculty and staff, local businesses and donors and current and former students established a special endowment in honor of head of printmaking and book arts, Patricia Pierce. The fund will provide materials, equipment, and supplies that support the growth and expansion of the printmaking and book arts department for future generations of artists. Pierce's and 4 other women's works are currently featured in the visual art gallery exhibit Dwell. Dr. Amna Nair, the director of the dental health program, was recognized for a dedication to the SFCC dental programs by Lieutenant Governor Howie Morales. Instructor Felix Lopez won both the second place award in the Painted Bultos category and the E. Boyd Memorial Award for originality and expressive design for his piece Cruz de Viernes Santo at the recent Spanish Market. Lopez has taught at the college for 12 years. He's mentored many of his students who's also won awards at past Spanish markets. And his son Joseph, who previously taught at the college, and daughter Krissa have also showcased their work at the Spanish Market. We launched the fall semester with a convocation event on August 8th. When the Full-Time Faculty Award, I held a conversation with the president, on August 12th, which was basically a Q&A type event. Then we celebrated the new semester with an ice cream social on August 14th. And then during that week, there were various professional development activities and department meetings and a Science on the Fear exhibit and things like that to launch the semester. I had my first meeting with the President's Diversity Advisory Committee, which went very well, and we have some projects coming up. Academic advisor Jonathan Harrell played multiple roles in the performance of The Investigation, a Search for the Truth in 10 Acts, written by the award-winning playwright Robert Schenken and produced by New Mexico Actors Lab, a nonpartisan public service event. Under local and statewide bonds, there's renovation to the stucco. If you drive by the fitness center, you can certainly see that we're working on the stucco. I've noticed that seems to be a Santa Fe event this time of year, that everybody works on their stucco. And this is supposed to be completed by early October. The proposed Phase 2 renovations, which include pneumatic valves, repairs to the solar thermal system, outdoor track resurfacing, emergency system upgrades, gymnasium dividers, new thermostats, air handling and pool boiler replacements, bleacher repairs, tennis court repairs, renovations to showers and restrooms, as well as the addition of another gender neutral bathroom. The Automotive Technology Center, the POM staff has selected a building envelope commissioning agent, and they'll negotiate a contract. Greer Stafford has met with the county fire marshal and construction industries regarding code issues. A mechanical system has been identified, and the design development documents should be submitted by the end of the month. So it's scheduled for completion by the end of summer 2020, hopefully for for classes to begin in that fall. In the learning space in the main campus, we've had dust collection replacement for the woodworking studios, welding lab upgrades, roofing and parking lot improvements, energy efficiency improvements, and then in adult education, they're in the process of putting together an RFQ for flooring and furnishing company. I visited the adult education staff yesterday, and the first thing they told me is that they had original carpet. So apparently it's good that we are on track for that.
Whoa.
and I saw it. Under community engagement, the Santa Fe voters voted the William C. Whitner Fitness Education Center, received several awards in the Santa Fe Reporter's Best of Santa Fe issue, including third place Best Pool in the kids section, second place Best Fitness Classes, second place Best Pilates Classes, and second place Best Weightlifting. SFCC Foundation President Carmen Gonzalez and I hosted a meeting with Enterprise Bank and Trust and city economic development representatives to talk about strengthening workforce development partnerships. Bill Kipnis and I met about discussing our improvements on the Siemens Energy Upgrade Project. And there have been many, we've had a really consistent schedule of board development lunches through the foundation that have been, I think, very helpful in establishing community ties. Nick Tejas and Henry Migneron and I attended the capital projects hearing in Espanola a couple of weeks ago to present our project list for the next GO bond cycle, which included repairs to roofing and parking lots. So that was kinds of exciting health and safety type of projects. And then I also attended a Department of Finance and Administration training for, it was on higher education finance specifically for DFA employees, but it was conducted by our NMICC Executive Director, Kathy Ulibarri, and then a couple of presenters from CUP. But it was very well received, I think, and I think that we had some breakthroughs in terms of some educating on some issues in higher ed finance. So it was an important opportunity for us to be able to get that done. And I've continued to meet with community members, including Kate O'Neill, our Secretary for Higher Education, Dr. Veronica Garcia, the Superintendent for Schools, Lillian Montoya, the CEO of Christus St. Vincent, and then representatives from Tom Udall's office, also Tom Mason, President and CEO of Triad National Security and the Director of Los Alamos National Labs, and also Dr. Bob Martin, President of IAIA, and I got a really good tour of IAIA, which was fun. I want to mention, too, that we have 2 positions on our governing board that will be up for election on November 5th. The day to file was yesterday, and we have 5 people who have filed for those elections, so that's good that there was interest in our elections and all. The Santa Fe Reporter's July 22nd issue featured information about Firstborn, the statewide program based at SFCC, in the story Programs for Mothers and Families of Santa Fe. Firstborn Director Tekla Johnson was interviewed about the program on August 26th on KSWV's K Suave Radio, and that program has continued to develop for us and really be very well received. Also, the director of the Early Childhood Center of Excellence, Jennifer Duran-Salih, has had an op-ed appear in the Santa Fe New Mexican on July 20th. And Dr. Salih and a representative from Lanel were also interviewed about the conference that will be held in September that will feature Dr. Bruce Perry. Excuse me, the Continuing Education and the George O'Keeffe Museum co-hosted a grantsmanship training program on campus. This is an intensive hands-on workshop for nonprofit government grant seekers, and it guides participants through all stages of planning programs, researching funding sources, and writing the proposal. The dental program and the respiratory care staff and students volunteered at the International Folk Artists Resource Fair, and the dental program held an open house on July 18th. So as you can see, there has been a lot going on. We have coming up on September 5th, the Continuing Education Open House. On the 6th, the Visual Arts Gallery exhibit Dwell closes. On September 6th through 8th, the Witter Fitness Center Education Tennis Tournament will be held. September 16th through 17th, Los Alamos National Laboratory Foundation and SFCC present an early childhood conference featuring Dr. Bruce Perry, who is a senior fellow of the Child Trauma Academy and professor at Northwestern University. And this will be held at the Santa Fe Convention Center. And then we'll always keep this on the schedule until it's over with. February 19th through 20th, 2020 will be the Higher Learning Commission's accreditation site visit. So I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody? Okay, I have a question on the gender-neutral bathroom. Is that still going to contain lockers?
I'll ask Henry about the design because they're in the design. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Chairman, members of the board, President Raleigh, the plan is inclusive to the designer to look at lockers, and we're just now have selected an architect, so WH Pacific is the architect that's been selected, and we'll sit down with them now and go over all the requirements and all the inclusive aspects of the project that we want them to look at, and one of them is lockers.
Okay.
They'll come with their recommendations and so forth as to whether or not we need additional lockers or where those lockers would be put if there's advice from them to include lockers.
Okay.
There are lockers
There
just
are
adjacent.
lockers now,
And there's a
right.
number of them that are empty. So I'm not
Right.
sure whether we'll need more lockers or not.
Oh, probably not more lockers, but there will
Yeah.
be lockers.
Yes, there will be
Okay,
lockers.
okay.
Yes.
All right, great, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. No other questions? All right, enrollment report.
Chair Siegel, members of the board, President Rowley, I am going to turn this over to Tomasina and Marcos and Todd to talk about all of the incredible initiatives that they have been working on that have contributed to our amazing enrollment at the moment, head count being down 0.73%. Lots of important initiatives, texting on the part of marketing and all sorts of outreach, and then as Dr. Rowley has mentioned, some calling and other things like that. So I'm going to hand it over.
Thank you. Chair Siegel, members of the board, President Rowley, and colleagues, I am super excited this evening to share with you some great initiatives that we have been doing these past 12 weeks. I would be remiss if I didn't say, however, that it was not just one person, one office. It was the entire college campus who came together, identified a need, realized what and how we could help our students, and we all came together and we said, from OPI for the reports to OIT with last-minute requests to our team coming together and volunteering to work in the evenings after hours, after they had worked their full day and dealing with everything that they had to, they came together and they said, you know what can we do to better help our students? It wasn't about the enrollment numbers, when in the end it did impact that. It was more so about our students. And so we had a lot of opportunities to reach out to students who hadn't yet registered or persisted from the spring semester, students who had not registered from 5 years ago, students who had completed a certificate degree or certificate program and maybe wanted to come back, students who maybe were undeclared and needed a little bit more guidance, and most recently our disenrollment initiative. Not to be punitive, we wanted to help our students figure out a pathway to help them keep them in school and help them find a way and figure out how to pay online or other resources. We also have reopened our scholarship, and we'll keep it open as funds are available, and we'll award it on a first come, first served basis. We have reached out to students with regards to other opportunities for them to be successful on campus, but our most recent initiative will start taking place here within the next week, and that's calling out to students who may have missed a class, and we want to do what we call a checkup from the neck up. We want to provide a resource to them. We want to know if they need some assistance, and we may not know what that is, but we might have a resource for you, and if we don't, we are certainly going to find what that resource is and help you stay in school. So a lot of our initiatives are, how do we get them here, how do we keep them here, and how do we make sure that they are in a healthy environment that helps them focus and be more successful academically. Again, this cannot and was not done independently. My colleague here to my left had other great impacts throughout these past 12 weeks, and let me tell you, we were running, and we hit the ground running hard, and it was a great team and a great effort, and I really personally want to thank everybody who has helped over these past few weeks, because it's been a lot of work, but we greatly do appreciate everything and everyone. Marcos?
Thank you, Thomasina. Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam President. So looking at these numbers right now, the first thing that I want to point out is currently what it looks like right now in just head count, we are down 0.73%. However, if we were to have run the numbers right now, 5:30 or whatever time it is right now of the day, we actually have been registering a lot of our dual credit classes that are on the high school campus. In fact, we have 54 dual credit classes that are being taught on the high school campus this fall semester. That is the most we have ever had in the history of dual credit here at SFCC. Of those 54 classes, so far, 20 have been registered. Now, if you're wondering, why haven't the other 34 been registered yet? Dual credit, it's quite the process, especially when we're dealing with our high school partners. So what we have to do, first of all, is make sure that they apply online and have their A numbers. So we had our large staff of 3 going to all of our different high schools over the last 2 weeks and are helping these students, walking them through the application. Once that's done, then there's that 48-hour period where we have to let the application get screened, and then the students have their A numbers. From there, I give all of our high school partners the dual credit registration forms. The faculty there then give them to those students. They all have to fill them out, get them signed, and get them back to us. So far, we don't have all the forms back from all those classes, but as they're coming in, we're registering them. So I just want to point out that if we were to run those numbers right now at 6 o'clock p.m. today, Wednesday, we actually, because I calculated this on my Excel on my phone, we actually would be up right now 0.52% on the headcount numbers. So I just want to point that out. And there's still so many more dual credit classes to go. Also want to point out that we are going to be having on September 6th, so not this Friday, but next Friday, SFCC night at Santa Fe High School. Everybody who represents SFCC, come one, come all to see the Demons take on Espanola Valley. We will be honored at halftime. They're going to have a big, awesome SFCC banner that the wonderful NPR created. And we are there to give out goodies, swag, and let you all know all the amazing things that SFCC has to offer. Also, we will be continuing, so I don't know if you remember this, but last time I was here, we started a program at Zona del Sol where once a month, SFCC, Earth Care, Poder Familiar, we are working together to recruit more actively at our Southside campus. Our Southside population to get them to our campus. But we wanted to make sure it's at a more neutral location. So that's why we have the Zona del Sol location. It was very successful, especially being that it was the first time out. It was the middle of the dog days of summer, and we had about 20 participants show up, and we had financial aid staff assist them with walking them through their FAFSA. We had staff on hand to walk them through the application or just to answer them questions about what we have to offer. We are going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to do that every single month until the year is up, and then we will resume again in August of 2020. Childcare is provided from Earth Care for free of charge, and we do have Spanish-speaking translators available. So we're very proud of those initiatives. Also, want to just point out that those Ticket to College workshops, those wildly successful Ticket to College workshops that we have at Capitol High School and Santa Fe High School, those are coming back starting in October. And let's see here, last but not least, also just wanted to point out too that yes, on top of all the calls and outreach, we also had our office send out the text messages to those students so that they could make their payments and not get disenrolled. But a lot of exciting things. We're very, very lucky to have some amazing partners right now that just are innovators and really believe in meeting our students' needs. And it's just so exciting. Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, sorry. How do I follow that?
Stand up.
I'm going to start by taking the mic out of the thing here. Okay. President Rowley, members of the board, I just want to share something briefly that is exciting, excites me about the future, which is as we kind of go, this was crunch time. We were in just the 11th hour. And any other metaphor you want to choose for that. But the what we're learning now and we're taking away is some really exciting ways to kind of make it so that the next spring, future semesters, this isn't just kind of a recurring like fires or crisis situation that we're putting out. And so what this is turned into is a really robust conversation about systematizing what's been happening, capturing what's been happening, and kind of bringing it into a more formal plan, of which we'll discuss in much more detail moving forward. But I just want to point out that there's, aside from all this great work that's been happening on the ground level, there's a lot to look forward to in terms of crystallizing some of this work.
Comments, questions? Jack?
Madam Chair, excuse me, one question I had is, could you roll back up to the chart, please? Thank you. The 0.73 increase that you reported, where is that on this chart?
Did you get it's in that handout right there.
Oh, it's in the
They
new
gave
one?
us a new handout.
Oh, okay. So it's showing there. You said a 0.73% increase, but it's a decrease, isn't it?
Madam Chair, thank you very much, Board Member Sullivan. So what I was saying is, if we were to have run the report again right now, because this report was actually completed and run this morning at about 8:30 a.m., if we were to have run it again today, post dual credit registration, those numbers would be up right now, because I ran my little Excel report based on these numbers, about 0.53%, Madam Chair.
Up.
Of 1%, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy?
So, a question about, on the report that we have that was run at 8:30 this morning. Dual enrollment, it says that our head count is 296 or 127 in terms of FTE. Where do we expect that to be this semester over the course of enrollment? So how many students will we end up with in dual credit?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board Member Keith. So actually, that number should grow significantly with these classes. And I actually think that this number, I'd actually like to run the Cognos report on dual credit, because I think this number should actually be a little bit bigger than the 296 that we have currently right now on this report. But just to give you a good indicator, in the spring of 2019, we had over 840 students participate in the dual credit program. And based on the number of cohort classes that we have on the high school campuses and our enrollment here at the college, we're anticipating those numbers being very close to that, Madam Chair.
A follow-up question, when is the deadline? So is there a deadline for the dual enrollment students to come in?
Madam Chair, Board Member Sullivan, I'm sorry, Board Member Keith. We like to set a deadline. In fact, I actually set the deadline for today for all the forms to be in. But we're registering students. Hopefully, we will be completely done with all of these classes by next board meeting for sure.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the update.
Well, this is just the kind of report we've been waiting for. Thank you all very much. And for all these new ideas that I think we've been talking about for months and months and months, but really doing them now and having them work. This is just wonderful. And thank you all for your enthusiasm. Thanks for everybody who volunteered and came back at night. And the plan to systematize that, I think that's ultimately what we have to do. And so thank you all.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I also want to comment about the interdisciplinary nature of what you guys are doing, because I think that really makes a difference in how students perceive our work. You know, when you have marketing and you have admissions people and you have volunteers from across the campus working together to help students be successful, your results are showing. And I just want to thank you all, because I think that that's really important, that you not work in silos, but that you work across the campus. And thank you for making that possible.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to just go out of order a second, and then we'll get to the staff senate. The
Foundation.
right, but we're going to go to the approval of the management representative. So Lynn, and you want to come up? And that is tab E.
Chair Siegel, members of the board, I want to introduce you to Holly Agajanian, who has agreed to serve as management's representative to the Labor Management Relations Board. As some of you are aware, Tom Gonzalez, who was the management's prior representative on that board, resigned earlier this summer. We've worked on finding someone with appropriate qualifications and who's willing to serve for the salary of zero on the board. And we have hit the jackpot here with Holly. And so I wanted to give the board a chance to meet her before voting on approving her to the board.
Yes.
Thank you.
I thought we had a resume in here or something.
I emailed it ahead. I don't know.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah, I don't think so.
okay.
I'm happy to give my little
Tell us a little
biography
bit about
about myself. Apparently, I'm not the most qualified, according to Lynn, but the one who's willing to serve for zero. My name is Holly Agajanian. I have been a lawyer 17 years now. The first several years of my career were in criminal law in New York City. I moved to Santa Fe in about 2006. And since then, I've been practicing almost exclusively in the employment law arena. And with that, about 95% of it has been plaintiffs, representing the businesses, defense side. I do a very small amount of plaintiffs' class action work these days, but for the most part, my practice involves representing local businesses and other entities in employment disputes. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be a part of something that could be part of a community service thing. I'm happy to offer that up if it's something that you all are interested in. As Lynn said, the chopped liver over here. Happy to do it. If you guys have any questions at all, I'm happy to entertain them.
So you practice here and live in Santa Fe?
I do.
Okay, right. Any questions? We're so grateful that someone wants to do it.
When I was being sworn into federal court in New York, you have to have an attorney who moves you in. And the guy next to me, the attorney, said, I'm moving so-and-so for admission in federal court just because for once I want to hear Your Honor say motion granted.
Holly's being very modest about her credentials. She came very highly recommended and has, I think, exactly the experience the management representative for this board needs.
Good, yes. Thank you, Lynn, for finding her. All right,
Yes.
any other questions?
Thank you very much for considering this high-paid position.
All
your
right, this
interest
is
in
an
public
action item, so we need a motion.
I'd like to move that we accept Holly's volunteer.
We'll have to practice your last name. Say it again.
Johnson. It's Agajanian.
Agajanian. And what,
It's Agajanian. If you look at it and listen to it at the same time, you'll get it and you have it.
okay. What,
It's
where's?
Armenian.
Armenian?
Armenian, yes.
Okay. Ah, okay. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Johnson.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
While Lynn's here, I got a question on the open meetings
Well,
resolution.
we're gonna do that next. We're gonna do that in a little bit. We just took her out of order.
Oh, okay, so is Lynn going to stay around?
Yeah. Lynn, are you staying or?
That's what I was.
Okay, well, could you come back just for a second? Jack has a question about the open meetings resolution, and it's a legal question.
I don't know if it's a legal question. I'm not an attorney, but it's a question. It's a question, yeah, it's a legal question.
We're going out of order.
It's a legal question. Well, we already went out of order.
Yes.
Okay.
Come back and sit here, please. Thank you.
Yes, Chair Siegel.
Okay, my first question, my only question on the resolution, and I'm on page E30, for the board members, right there. There you go. If you go down to the bottom of the first paragraph, whoop, stop there. It states that no action will be taken during the work session preceding the regular meeting. For quite some time, for example, if the board will look at the agenda for today's work session, which is the first page in your book, you'll see down near the bottom it says, the governing board reserves the right to take action on any item on the agenda. And that footnote has been in our work sessions as long as I've been on the board, which is 4 years. So, which is it?
You have, Member Sullivan, Chair Siegel, you have identified a inconsistency between what your agendas say and what your past resolution provides for. And so your resolution would control, and you ought not be taking action during the work session. If you want to take action during the work session, you should revise your resolution to allow for that. There's nothing in the Open Meetings Act that would prevent you from taking action in the work session, so long as it was on the agenda as an action item.
I don't believe we've ever taken action on a work session. So we should just
So
take
the
that off
footnote,
of the
you should take the,
footnote.
in my memory and experience, I would echo Chair Siegel's memory of that. I don't believe the board takes action in the work session. Those are discussion items that then, if action is taken, it is appropriately noticed in the agenda, and the action is taken by motion and second and vote at that time. And so the footnote, which I believe is often just put on by rote by the board assistant, is a nullity, and so should be taken off for future agendas.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we should make that change then in our format.
We'll make that, yes. All right, we'll proceed with our agenda. Staff Senate report? Are we doing
No,
that?
foundation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm already switched to the next one. Foundation, thank you.
We didn't want to forget you.
No.
Madam Chair, governing board members, President Raleigh, thank you for the opportunity to provide our year-end report for fiscal year 2018-19. And I'm very happy to be here today. We're happy to present our reports quarterly to this board. I'll start with revenue for this period. 2018-2019 was $949,333. These are unaudited amounts, but that's an increase of $121,166 from the prior year. We do, however, get about a 20 to 30% bump at the end of the year when we do our year-end appeal. So we're looking to increase that amount, but we're happy that it's more than it was last year. And investment earnings were pretty pitiful, but it was $270,718 for a total of $1,220,051 in new cash gifts and investment earnings. Of the goal 2.3 in the college's strategic plan, which is to increase financial aid, which is the largest barrier to student success. We raise, the baseline is raising $100,000 every year. This year we raised $310,300 for financial aid for students, and that exceeded the goal by $210,300. In-kind contributions in the same period were $138,052, and they included contributions of new artwork, equipment, vehicles, including a 2015 Impreza for the automotive technology program, and a printing press for the book art and printmaking department. I'm not going to take your time to read all the highlights, but you've got them listed. The Domanica Foundation being the major donor to our Contract for a Better Tomorrow program. That is a program that has the highest persistence and retention rates in the college, and to which we match dollar for dollar their $50,000 gift. Expenses for this year were $1,202,758 and include the fiscal year 1893 and fourth quarter reimbursable expenses to the college in the amount of $505,274, and that is represented in $180,623 in scholarships, including that CBT program, endowed scholarships, veteran scholarships, and tribal scholarships. Then there were $303,003 in special projects and grants, including $76,200 for the firstborn program and $12,648 in operational expenditures. Our foundation is committed to matching dollar for dollar programs every year, and in this past year, we matched, as I said, CBT with $50,000. The PLAS internship program matched the gift from Los Alamos National Laboratory with $40,000, and we are committed to do that again this year. Staff and faculty professional development is not matching. We'd love it to be matching, but it's not matching. We put $30,000 into that each year, which is, it's underfunded. We hope we can attract more money to that program. The MA Beckus program, if you recall, that is a program we've received funds for the past 5 or 6 years from the Mexican federal government through the Mexican consulate in Albuquerque, and it's been very well received. We just received notice yesterday that unfortunately, with their new president and the new administration, they've taken all the decision-making that which used to be with every consulate in all 50 states. They've taken it back to headquarters in Mexico City, and they're not funding our college or any other community college. It's all going to universities. So we're sorry about that. We're committed to try to keep that fund alive with other private contributions, and we're going to work on that. Our veteran scholarships are through the City of Santa Fe Veterans Administration, and we match that every year, 1-to-1. And then 11, possibly 12 scholarships for the Pueblos and Navajo Nation, and that is a very popular program. We hope to host the All Pueblo Council of Governors this year, as we did last year, for one of their meetings where the governors will sign the MOU, which is now in its 3rd year and needs to be re-signed. So that's totaling for those commitments $174,000. Additionally, we are often called on to provide expenses for other activities at the college, and the list below totals $48,203, and you can see that it's just a variety of activities: cultivation luncheons, luncheons for special concerns of the college, including housing and fitness, and just across the board of the needs of the college. We also, on the next page, we have regularly, as the president mentioned, have meetings with our community partners and with prospective donors and other organizations that are important to our college. And so you can see by month some of those events. Finally, we have some upcoming events, which are our Finance and Investment Committee meeting on October 16th, along with our full board meeting. This will be our annual meeting. We're very happy to have 2 governing board members, Secretary Gamble and Board Member Romero, who have served our board, served on our foundation board, and we're extremely grateful for your participation. We're looking forward to our joint meeting between our foundation board and the governing board on December 4th. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Martha.
I would just like to acknowledge the contributions that were made by Margaret's Peters family and initial people from the community, from the college community, who contributed to create that scholarship fund. I think that's a really nice way to honor Ms. Peterson's family and to provide some scholarship opportunities for our students. So
Thank you.
I think that's always a wonderful thing when people from our own internal community come together to do something like that.
Thank you, Member Romero. It's so important, and it's such a beautiful way of honoring someone. And we've also had Member Sullivan and Secretary Gamble do the same, and we're so grateful for all of that support. Thank you for mentioning that.
Jack, you had a question?
Madam Chair, I wanted to make just one comment. This is something the board already knows, but I wanted to make the comment so that those in the audience and listeners would be reminded of it, and that is the foundation, which has a number of hardworking members throughout the community representing different aspects of our community, does yeoman's work in getting these funds and making them available to our students. What I want to be sure everyone understands is that money then goes to our financial aid experts in the college, and the decisions about who receives these grants are made based on financial need and by the professionals that we employ to do that. So those two functions are separate. One raises the money, the other gives it away. I kind of like the second one, but the first one is of course the difficult one, and we thank you, Deborah, for that, and of course all of your board members. How many are there on the board now?
There's 17.
17 people on the board who are all out there beating the bushes, and that's what's making this work, and that's what's making this foundation endowment grow every year. So thanks again. Kudos.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sullivan. Your comments are taken to the heart, and we really appreciate your clarifying that, because it's hard work on the part of the financial aid office, who we rely heavily on to make sure that we're meeting the donor intent and making sure that the gift that they give is being distributed the way they've asked for it to be, and to make sure all of our students receive the support that they need, which is great. So thank you again. Any other questions?
I would like to echo Jack's congratulations to you and to the financial aid people, because we all know how important financial aid is for so many of our students. And the work that you all do is just so important, and so you do it so well. I would also like to ask if you would bring us up to date on the artist interview videos, because I know the foundation has been doing that for a while, and I wonder if you could just bring us up to date on that.
Thank you, Secretary Gamble. I'd be happy to. As a matter of fact, I'm working on Friday, all day Friday, on finishing editing what we're calling a highlight reel of all of the 20 videos that we've made over the past year. It's taken a while, and then I was out for a while. So now we're getting ready to put it all together in something that will, I think, be a very interesting piece for the community and for the college campus and for all the artists that have been involved. That reel, we've been offered several places to screen it. One would be the Screen, and the other is the Violet Crown. And both entities are interested in using the 20 interviews that we did, which are 3-minute interviews, as something that they could run before their screening of their feature films. And so they were excited about that. So we're going to have terrific placement for our college in these videos. And then we're working with NPR to figure out how to really introduce that to the college community in terms of whether it's through the website or some other more 21st century ideas of communicating that. But shooting these videos, getting them shot, our director of photography was a film student here, and she's now, Ashley Martinez, works managing all the equipment at what they call the Cage. And she was fabulous, and the artists were so thrilled to have us there asking them about why they do what they do and why they donated work to the college, because all of the art on campus has either been donated through the foundation or it's on loan, like Ethel the Whale. That's on loan from Meow Wolf, but they had to put about $400,000 into purchasing that piece and then moving it in pieces and having the artist reassemble it here. So it was a huge expense. It's probably closer to $500,000, but we have a very generous community that loves our college and wants to have their work seen here, or they want to make sure that people have an opportunity to experience art and culture, the art and culture that surrounds us. So it's moving right along, and it's coming up Friday. Hopefully that'll be it. It'll be finished, and then we'll be inviting you to a screening.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Are there any other questions?
How many scholarships do we give in a year?
Typically, we give about 600 scholarships a year, and some of those are given, some of them are given in the summer too, so we count those. So, yeah, about 600. And the demand is greater.
Oh, greater, definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now, Faculty Senate report.
Good evening, Chair Siegel, members of the board, President Rowley. I want to start by just a big thank you to Martha Romero and Kathy Keith. They had a special extended term to their board. We got a little bit more than they bargained for with a change in election law and everything. A lot of people have asked me about running for the board, and I tell them it's a thankless job, lots of work, no paid. It's a very difficult district to run in now, and there's lots of blame and very little credit. Still 5 people are running, and I think that's pretty spectacular. So it's going to be a very interesting, I spoke with the Secretary of State the other day about a concern. I hope that eventually the college will take a look at the possibility of public funding for that race, because now, while it's running with all these districted races in the city council and the districted races in the school board, it goes all the way from Espanola to Cedar Crest. It's the biggest district for a job that doesn't get paid. So I think there has to be some way. They told me that probably we'd have to fund it through the college if we were going to do something like that. But something to look at in the future, because this is going to be an interesting test this election, because most people will probably be going into the voting booth having no idea who is running for the community college board. Anyway, well, I want to thank you for your service. I know you guys aren't done yet. I know we haven't always agreed, but as I often tell people on my radio show, I don't trust people who always agree with me, and neither should you. So, let's see. We'd like to welcome Dr. Rowley. Very excited to have her here. There's an air of optimism, and she has a very refreshing demeanor, and I think a lot of openness, and people really appreciate that. This year at Convocation, she said, "I will trust all of you until you prove me you're not trustworthy." I thought that
Something to that effect.
something like that, yes. And so far for you, the reviews are very positive, and we're very excited and very optimistic. We look forward to having Dr. Rowley come to Faculty Senate in the near future. Let's see, we're also very excited about the changes that Thomasina and Margaret Peters brought into the way we handle financial drops and the whole handling of obviously it seems to have a very positive effect, and we're very excited, and big thank you to both of them for the work they put into that. And I think that the proof is in the pudding there, but the faculty are very thankful for the work that's gone into that and the results that are coming from that. Let's see, there's a project underway to develop a more consistent syllabus template across campus so that students will have a more similar look from one class to the next. And a big thank you to Jenny Landon and Joel Carlson, who are leading that project. We have a group of faculty who are very interested in making that. We're using a checklist this semester, but a group of faculty are working with some of the administration staff to come up with something that will really work best for all of the students and for the faculty. A concern has come up that many, and I'm getting this a lot from many of the non-bargaining unit members who I do represent as Faculty Senate Chair, that there is some discussion of enforcement of contract provisions on non-members of the collective bargaining unit. And the college can certainly create any sort of new policies that they would like to through the policy development process, and they could certainly mirror the aspect of the contract, but we want to make it very clear that it's our understanding, and it even states that in the contract, that the provisions in the contract cannot be enforced upon non-bargaining unit members. And partly because they're not then protected by the union, and so that the two go together. There's a new Gen Ed committee starting work on bringing the Gen Ed classes into compliance with the HEC guidelines, and that's coming along. It's going to be a lot of work. I really want to thank Dr. Peters for providing what we believe is adequate and reasonable compensation of ATA for the members on that committee, because at least, and that probably won't go forward with the ATA alternative time assignments, but clearly, in the first couple of years, that committee is going to be working especially hard, and we really appreciate the support with that. Let's see, we're working hard on working out campus issues this semester before we bring them to you. So maybe we'll have really short reports from Faculty Senate. There are rumors abound, but I'm going to be working very hard to control rumors and resolve issues at the lowest possible level. So there may be things I'll bring up next meeting. We'll have a few of these things that are going to come up from the Senate. When the Senate brings them up as a resolution, I'll bring them back to you, but I'm going to try to avoid bringing things to you before the full Senate has come to some resolution on those issues. I'm also going to be working on bringing faculty reps with me to the report each month, to try to rotate a member from each of the different departments around campus, so that if there are things within those departments that they want to bring, and also just bring you the faces of the wide diversity of faculty here on campus. Solar Club is working on the solar lighting of Esther the Whale, and so we're planning on, we're going to work with marketing on this, making the official lighting the week of the climate crisis action, which is going to be September 20th through 27th. And there is also the Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, YUCA, Youth United for Climate Crisis Action, is organizing locally for what is the global student strike. I know, Greta Thunberg has been doing student strikes every week in Sweden, but internationally and in the United States, Friday the 20th, is the day of action, and followed by a week of climate crisis action. We're working on putting together some events with the college to promote that afterwards. I know it's an awkward thing for a college to promote a strike. Fortunately, Friday is probably the least number of classes we have, but we're hoping to where the Faculty Senate is working on ways in which we can create academic components for that, so students who do choose to go instead of going to class will have some way of making that part of their class that day and through the rest of the week of action. And so, if you guys don't know, it's the week of climate crisis action, and I've been meeting with businesses all over town, and there's a growing excitement about this day, and I'm looking forward to the college being a part of that, because I think it's a critical role in what we do here.
What day is that?
Friday, September 20th, so it'll be before the next board meeting, I believe. Mm-hmm. So there's no action from the board, but I think a lot of things will be going on at lower levels from the campus. And with that, are there any questions?
Question?
Madam Chair? Just a quick question. So in our board books, we have minutes from the Faculty Senate from May the 10th.
Yes.
So have you met since then, and what is your schedule for meeting?
We meet every other Friday from 10 to noon.
Okay.
And we have a meeting coming up, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, and then every other Friday during the semester.
So have you started meeting for
Yes.
this semester?
Yes.
Okay. And so your report tonight is based on what happened at your first meeting for
First,
the year?
we've had 2 meetings so far, but you have the meeting from the 10th because we hadn't had a meeting to approve the minutes until recently. So we just approved those minutes, and we have another set of minutes that will be going forward next week, and we'll be keeping up with that at that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Jack?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, Zuby, I've mentioned this before, and I think other board members have as well. Your reports, and particularly the faculty senate minutes, which in this particular case are almost 5 months old, are basically ancient history as far as that goes. Each time you report to us, you report from your own notes on things that we haven't had an opportunity to review prior to the meeting. If you want us to engage with you in a responsible way and an informed way, we need to know what you're going to talk about ahead of time in case we want to do our own research on it in order to be able to discuss it with you. Is this a possibility?
Well, what I will say is that generally, so I speak with at the Senate at the meetings, talk about what they would like me to include in my reports. Our most recent Senate meeting is almost always after the board packets have already gone out. If you would like, I could email members of the board directly with the contents of what I plan to be reporting about after the meeting. But I don't want to just have all my reports be about, as you say, ancient history of things that happened 2 or 3 meetings ago, because we have to have our meetings 2 weeks and then have to approve minutes later. And so a lot of times we're going to be at least 2 or 3 weeks or at least 2 meetings out. So I'd like to report on things that are going on more currently than to refer back to something that happened.
Well, and do that. Do that.
So would you like that to have it sent out directly to you?
No, send it to
Okay,
Patricia.
after the board packet is already gone.
Put it into the board packet. Your comments are like any other staff or faculty comments of people who come before us. If they have issues that they want us to think about, consider, they will present us something, whether it's the enrollment report or whether it's capital improvements report. We don't ask our capital improvements director to just say, I've got $8.2 million worth of capital improvements today. Is everybody okay with that? We need a little background on that, which does happen to be in the book today. So I'd like to encourage you to, whatever comments you feel are useful to the board, that you jot down on your yellow legal pad, that you submit those to Patricia by the deadline for the board packet material, and we get a chance to read it over and to engage with you, I think, in a more useful way than we can when we just get it cold.
I can't promise that, Chair, Mr. Sullivan. My report has to be at the discretion of the Senate, what they would like me to be reporting. My concern is, because of the schedule of when the board packets go out, that the most recent information from my most recent Senate meeting is what I want to bring forward as a report, and what at this point the Senate would like me to bring forward. If I could send them out after the Senate meeting, but oftentimes that will be after the board, so it may not be in the board packet, but we could get them to you before the meeting. But it's the discretion of the Senate. I can bring this to their attention, but at this point, our desire is to get you have the minutes. A lot of times that's a little bit out of date, but we would like to be able to, something exciting happens the meeting right before, there's something that is a major concern of faculty, and it happens after the board packet has gone out, we don't want to wait 6 weeks before we bring that to the board.
I would ask you to give it a try.
Okay. Well,
If you find it's too difficult, we can certainly make some accommodations. I always read the faculty minutes, and quite frankly, in most cases, they don't bear a lot of resemblance to what you report on. So I'm at a loss to have really the background that I need as a board member, to interact with you and to do what we can do as a board to interact with and better the circumstances for the faculty as well as for the students. So I think that communication has got to improve.
I will work with you, but again, my report is at the discretion of the Senate, and I will talk to them and bring your concerns to them.
I'd appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, one of the.
Okay. Yes.
Go ahead.
Zubi, I wonder if you would just elaborate a little bit on the point you raised regarding policy relating to the union versus non-union people. I wasn't sure I understood what the issue or question was.
So I could just give an example. And
Okay, that'd be great.
This isn't the be-all and end-all, but many in the union negotiated contract, members of the bargaining unit are required to be on campus 30 hours a week.
Okay.
That's not in policy anywhere. And many of our people who are newer faculty, who are not covered under the bargaining unit yet,
I see.
are being asked, told they have to be here 30 hours a week. And that's, if we want to change policy to mirror what we put in the bargaining contract, that's certainly legitimate and a prerogative of the board, but we cannot, as a college, begin to arbitrarily enforce things that aren't in policy just because the bargaining unit members have to follow the things in the contract does not mean those who are not in the bargaining unit have to also. And again, the prerogative of the board, we have a way of creating policies, and I think we should, but I think we just have to be careful not to try to impose the bargaining unit contract on non-members.
Good, thank you.
Martha.
So it might be a question for the board and for Dr. Raleigh, but my understanding is that the union contract has precedence over everything, including policy. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that you don't need a policy if you have a contract. The union contract reigns.
True. Where there is any disagreement, it reigns. What I'm talking about is people who are not part of the bargaining unit. They are not bound by the contract.
My understanding was that the union represented all faculty, whether they were part of the union or not.
We represent all members of the bargaining unit, but there are many faculty who were excluded from the bargaining unit because they were temporary faculty who have been, who are on probation, have been here for less than 1 year. They're not part of the bargaining unit. They have to follow policy, but they are not bound by the contract.
We'll have to ask that of our.
But Madam Chair, they are bound by their personal and individual contracts. Each faculty member that is hired at Santa Fe Community College signs a contract. And what happens, in my understanding, is that contract that they signed pertains to them. It may have 30 hours of on-site requirements, or it may not. Once they then become full-time faculty under the purview of the union, then any conflicts between the union contract and their contract would be resolved in favor of the union contract. Any omissions where it's not discussed in the union contract, the individual professional services contract would apply. So So I would disagree, from my understanding, that those temporary and provisional employees, faculty, may well be required to be on campus 30 hours a week if that's what their contract says.
Madam Chair.
Okay, come
can
on
we
up.
have,
Yes, please, will you
can we
come up
have
and
our
give us,
legal counsel check that?
let's,
Madam Chair, excuse me, members of the board, President Rowley. So the members of the collective bargaining unit, which does not include all full-time faculty at this time because we have temporary full-time faculty and we have faculty who are in their first year of probation who are not a part of the collective bargaining unit. So the collective bargaining unit abides by the collective bargaining agreement. And it is true that the collective bargaining agreement is the ruling document for those folks. Everyone else would fall under our policies, and anything that is not covered in the collective bargaining agreement, we follow our policies.
so what's this 30 hours that,
So the
who
collective
doesn't have to do the 30
The
hours?
collective bargaining agreement says very clearly that faculty in the collective bargaining unit are required to be physically on campus a minimum of 30 hours a week. Our workload policy, our faculty workload policy, is not that explicit. So it outlines the number of college service hours, the number of pay hours that faculty teach, the number of office hours that they're to hold, all of which, if you add them up, come close to 30 hours, but not all the way. And so I think the institution is looking at having our policies where we can be consistent with these items in the collective bargaining agreement. As far as faculty contracts go, the template for faculty contracts are included as a part of the collective bargaining agreement, and those are the contracts that are used for all of our faculty. But we have temporary full-time faculty contracts and probationary contracts that wouldn't be included in the.
And those contracts do not specify the number of hours?
They do not, no.
Even though it's the same template as the other?
Yes, the contracts in the collective bargaining agreement, those templates for those faculty don't say that either. It's just the article in the collective bargaining agreement on workload and responsibilities. There are a couple of articles that cover those items.
So you're working on matching those together?
We're looking at policies now.
Appropriate
And
policy
yes,
changes.
yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Staff Senate.
Chair Siegel, members of the board, Madam President, I will present my report based on the minutes that are included in the board packet, starting with page B9.
Which minutes are dated August, by the way.
Well, the faculty don't meet during the summer, we do, so. Also, we don't have as complicated a minute approval process as the Faculty Senate does. So I just wanted to highlight that there was a discussion in early August about whether there still might be a culture of fear on campus. And there were a lot of suggestions that were made, including professional development sessions, perhaps led by outside experts on collegiality and conflict resolution in the workplace, similar but less formal brown bag lunch discussions about campus dynamics, an invitation to staff to express their concerns openly at the large Convocation Senate meeting, allying with other campus groups who may have similar concerns, and then bringing the issues to the attention of the administration through Governance Council. I will note that we received a Governance Council draft schedule, and the first meeting will be September 13th, so there'll be an opportunity there. And then moving on to the other set of minutes, which were earlier in the packet. They weren't in chronological order, they were in reverse chronological order. So during that big convocation meeting, we had a lot of talk about what strategically we might take up this year. And there's a pretty comprehensive list then on page B6. I believe mine's cut off a little bit. We have addressed some of those salary issues, as you know. President Rowley has also shared with us a little bit longer timeline with the comp and class study and making sure that that is correct. And so we await the results of that. A lot of concerns raised about hiring processes that are causing issues for a variety of departments around campus. So our perception and what was listed, and I'm just reporting on what the members said, a lack of standard processes and procedures for hiring, mismatched job duties, payroll, human resources, and IT are all impacted by a lack of processes. One specific example was some of the help desk people getting yelled at about email addresses that haven't been set up yet because we have some kind of paperwork that hasn't reached them yet. And it's very hard on those help desk employees who really can't do anything. And so I think some of that is under consideration, but those are concerns that were expressed. It says there isn't significant onboarding issues. We've continued to advocate for better onboarding procedures. It says here a hiring handbook. We also would note the lack of either a faculty or a staff or an employee handbook at this time. It is creating a lot of stress, a lot of paper chasing, some of which is related to an issue which I have brought to you before, and that is the electronic PAN seems to be still hung up, which is the personnel action form. A lot of people worked on that. It seems to be perceived to be owned by one department that has not released it yet, and there's still a lot of concern because we felt like a lot of progress was done and then it has not been implemented. And I will point out that we were promised shortly after the convocation a year ago that that would be implemented, and we feel like over a year later is not shortly. Timesheets, there's a concern in the automatic system that when you fill out your timesheet, put in your vacation or sick time, it's submitted to your supervisor for approval, and it's possible, not that people do this, but it is possible in the system for the supervisor to make a change. The system does not send it back to the employee. And so if a change is made by someone who is not operating in agreement perhaps with their staff, that there's no chance for that employee to review it. And we feel like maybe we ought to have another loop back there. There seems to be a lot of confusion on exempt employees and the expectations, and we'd like perhaps some clarity on expectations for both sides on exempt employees. Let's see what else. Professional development, we do greatly appreciate the foundation offering professional development funding, and we are working on a new process to make that more equitable. However, that is only $30,000. Some departments budget for it. We've discussed this with President Rowley. Some departments either do not, or at one time in our financial situation it was cut. We're not sure that people have asked for it to be restored. And so especially for professional development that's really required to keep your jobs current, we'd like to see the administration take a look at that and across budget departments. There is a desire to have budget training, and we plan to invite probably Amy Pell and Nick to come in and do some budget training. And we are greatly appreciative that the president has offered to come to Staff Senate once a quarter. We look forward to a dialogue with her. And then what we're going to do with this list is create a plan with priorities and then subcommittees to address some of them. There's probably too many to work on in 1 year, and we realize that. So our next step will be to work with Julie Gallegos to develop a strategic plan and figure out how we're going to address these. And with that, I would stand for questions.
I have a question about the culture of fear. So can you speak a little bit about that?
I don't know if I can speak about it specifically. I think, there's long-standing things that go back at least one president, probably 3 presidents, some of which maybe haven't entirely been resolved. People have brought up concerns even with the comp and class study about transparency in terms of how not challenges isn't the right word, but how things might be addressed, because there was a lot of consternation still and fear about how things from the study that was done, I believe in 2011, were not resolved. I think there's still folks who aren't entirely comfortable with relations with management. And I think that Dr. Rowley's openness has begun to address that, as I agree with Zuby. I think there was a huge positive comment from the entire community after her convocation speech and her conversations with the president. Lots of questions. People feel now that there's an opportunity to address some of those kinds of things. I'm sorry, I can't be more specific than that.
Mm-hmm. That whole retaliation issue, or?
Possibly. I don't have specifics at this point. I could go back to the Senate if you like and bring something, but I don't know that this is the arena in which to address specifics, frankly.
Yeah, not specifics, no.
Yeah.
Just if that is there, and I know at many different times it has been there.
I almost think, this is my own interpretation, so not the entire Senate, that it maybe has less to do with fear and more to do with morale. And there's an opportunity here with a new president to raise everyone's morale. Certainly the 5% raise went a long way, but also folks look forward to that comp and class study, not only because there's potentially some more money there, but also because of really getting an opportunity to look at the work that folks are doing. As we tightened the budget, many people took on more and more responsibility. That wasn't always adjusted for, as you know, and so I think that's probably contributing to it as well. But I would say it's probably, on the bright side now, moving forward and really looking forward to working with this administration.
Okay, thank you.
Linda?
Yeah.
I would really encourage you and the staff senate to think about ways in which the positivity on the campus could be expanded, because I think sometimes that sense of fear or that sense of not having ownership has to do with negative feelings that have, as you say, built on over a long period of time. And sometimes the only way to change that is to really focus on what's the positive, what's the good thing, what are the good things happening here, because many good things happen here.
And I would agree, and I think that's happening more and more. One suggestion that we've made in the past with Dr. Cervantes that maybe didn't have time to be implemented, we used to have I think at one point it was called the Morale Committee, and then it was changed to something else. And that's been pretty inactive since Carmen left, Dr. Gonzalez left. And so reviving that committee, we do have the sort of cake and fruit thing once a month, but I think there's other opportunities to engage employees that way. The Staff Senate is considering a budget request. We do a staff appreciation event in June every year, but we'd really like to do 2. And at this point, we don't have the finances to do that. We think that's really important to, sit down with people and have a chance to just socialize, but also to do some awards and do some appreciation there. So I think that there are steps that we're interested in taking. And thank you for your suggestion.
And it's not always awards, and it's not always food, although that is always helpful. But I think there's a climate that gets created, and if your staff senate could think about how do you change the climate.
I'd be happy to take that back to them as a challenge. I think that's a good challenge.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would just like to follow up on the professional development. Certainly the board has been very interested in supporting professional development, and I think it would be great if the staff could come up with some specific professional development activities, kinds of things, and with some priorities. That I think that would be wonderful. The board would very much love to see that and support it to the extent that we might.
Okay, thank you, Member Sullivan, or Member Gamble.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're on everybody's tongue today.
Okay, now, the consent agenda, approval of the consent agenda. Do we have any questions about the student records? It's on the consent agenda. We had those few changes. I'm sorry. Ian, I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's okay, it's okay. All right. Madam Chair, members of the board, President Rowley, thank you. Student government had a very busy August. August 6th was new student orientation. Student government and student ambassadors helped work the information tables. We handed out schedules of meeting times to bring awareness to students of both meetings. We handed out brochures of leadership programs, items of swag, and student government handed out 3 senator packets, so that's very exciting. August 13th was the student government and student ambassadors training at the Higher Education Center. Training took place at the Higher Education Center from 8 to 5. We went over Constitution and the expectations of the student government. We held mock meetings with student ambassadors, which was a great help for all of us. We learned Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure. August 14th was the Student Government Association and Student Ambassador Retreat to Glorieta. We were in Glorieta from 8 to about 4. We did team building activities with the student government team. The student ambassadors team did their own team building activities, and we came together as a group and did our own team building activities for when we collaborate on our own events. August 19th and 20th was Welcome Week. Student government and student ambassadors helped work the information tables about the various leadership programs we have here at Santa Fe Community College. We handed out over 2,000 pieces of fruit on the info tables. Student ambassadors also delivered fruit to classrooms and continuing education. And student government and student ambassadors assisted in helping students find their classrooms. And that also helped us get to know the students and they get to know our faces. August 21st was the student government swear-in. We bought cookies, brownies, fruit, and chili con queso for students. We had about 75 students attend. We handed out items of swag to students in the crowd: pens, water bottles, carabiners, drawstring backpacks, and card holders with our cards in them. And about 100 plates of food were provided for students. And student ambassadors helped set up, and they were a great help, so thank you to them. And August 22nd was the OSD Hope Open House. It was the grand opening of the meditation room. 70 people attended. The meditation room has been a huge success. We feel the meditation room gives students a safe and relaxed environment to do some mindfulness exercises. And student government and student ambassadors helped welcome guests and gave tours of the office. And this upcoming week, student government, we're working on travel arrangements for the American Student Government Association Conference on November 15th through 17th in Los Angeles, California. We also added a new position to the student government. It is the Sergeant of Arms position, and the Sergeant of Arms position, the main goal of that position is to maintain the order in the meetings and to help with the flow of the meeting, if you will. And as you saw, we had a group of my student government team and some student ambassadors here to help with my, what's the word? Inauguration.
Yes, my inauguration. So I want to thank them for coming to and supporting. It means the world, absolutely. And that is it on my end. I stand for any questions.
Thank you. So do your meetings get unruly so that you need sergeant at arms?
Yeah, well, we've had discussion, and we feel with the new structure we've given SGA and everything like that, it's just we want to have the meeting flow effectively, just because it's moved to once a month now, and it's an hour meeting, so we want to move, really effectively and get everything done what we have to. And sometimes, there are situations in meetings that need to be handled, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've had a really busy week.
It was very busy, but it's.
Where is
gonna
this
be good.
meditation room?
It's in the Office of Student Development. So there's a sign-in sheet, you sign in. It's an awesome room. I love it personally. There's a beautiful mural, there's bean bags, lights.
I've seen tons of students go in and just relax for a couple of minutes. And I think it's really important for students to relax for a couple of minutes and turn off their brain or go into a room and just wind down, because I know college is stressful and it's stressful for all of us in our personal lives. We have things going on in our personal lives always, so it's a great thing.
Yeah,
Good idea.
comments? All right, thank you
Madam
very
Chair,
much.
can I- Just a quick, Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a quick. So I want to say welcome to the board officially, since we swore you in tonight.
Thank you.
And I really want to encourage you too, as you participate in the board meetings, to really think about the student voice and everything that the board is considering, because it's such a value in having, as a student, as a member of this board. So we talked about tonight some of the new things the college is trying so that we get more students here and they don't drop. The president had some great new initiatives around that, and our staff at the college and leadership of the college as well. Always good to have student voices involved in that too. What are you hearing from students about that? Do you think it was successful? Do you think there are other things that we can try? So I think that it's really great at these meetings when we get the student voice. We're going to be considering policies over the coming months, and I know that you have a process that you go through in order to have a voice in those, but it's always good for us to take that into consideration too, of how those policies impact students and what students' opinions are on them.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, if I can, Thomasina, Margaret, I really appreciate the fact that you guys actually called students. Sometimes it takes a physical tap or a call or anything like that to engage the student and inform the student of their situation. So I really appreciate you guys for doing that. It obviously made the difference, so thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay, now on to the minutes and the policy under the consent agenda. And we've removed the regular meeting minutes of July 24th.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, then now we have the July 24th meeting. Jack, you had a questions or something?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't able to be present for this meeting, but I did, of course, read the minutes, and two things popped up that I wanted to discuss very briefly. One is on, excuse me, page C13. And that was during the discussion of the automotive center and what actions were forthcoming. The part that concerned me was the first bullet, which reads, value engineering means making compromises to lower the costs. In the project proposal, we include everything that we want and things that we wish for, and then negotiate. I would say, based on my experience, that that's really not what value engineering is or should be. Value engineering is bringing together outside non-design professionals to review the plans at a given stage. Typically, this may be at the 30%, then again at the 70% stage. The object is not necessarily to drop things out to reduce the cost of the project. The object with these independent evaluations, which is what the value engineering is to perhaps come up with a better way of doing it, a more innovative way, a more cost-effective way, a more energy-efficient way, whatever the perception is. The purpose is not to second-guess the design firm, but to participate with the design firm, with these other outside professionals who are in that profession, be it architecture, engineering, and come up with those alternate suggestions, which in the end, the architect and the owner are the final decision makers as to whether those suggestions are accepted. But I'm hoping that as we move forward in the design process, that's the way we look at value engineering. Anybody can cut costs. You can cut out one thing. You can cheapen the roof. You can cheapen the windows. There's 101 ways to cheapen a building to reduce cost. But the best way to get a good building, a $5 million building, is to have someone come in at these one or two stages and say, let's take an independent look, and let's be sure that all the alternatives have been thought about, and those independent consultants will then cost out those alternatives. It's just not making recommendations to the architect saying, go do more work. Those consultants are tasked with saying, if you use XYZ electrical system, our calculations are that it will save you so much in construction cost and so much in annual operation costs. So that raised a red flag for me. I think that's the kind of value engineering that I would hope we do as that project moves forward. The only other question or comment that I had was on page C3 at the bottom. And this was in a very interesting discussion that Mr. Morimoto and others presented about the strategic plan items, and throwing out some things to think about. And one of the things, two of the things that we talked about at our retreat last week was the Midtown campus, and was also the Higher Education Center. And where do we go with both of those initiatives? And my personal feeling is that we need, and I know we are, keeping track of what's going on the Midtown campus, which is very much in the formative stages at this point. But at the same time, I feel that we need to focus ourselves on the HEC and what role we want it to play in the long term, and move towards that role. Mr. Morimoto even mentioned, do we want to start offering 4-year degrees in the healthcare area, for example? Now, we can assume that we'll immediately get pushback from certain 4-year colleges in Albuquerque about that. But we're in the northern region of the state. We're not located in Albuquerque. So I thought that was an insightful thing to bring forward. And I think that we need to begin to use the trite expression, think outside the box, and say, where is that asset to our community and to this college going? And how can we move it forward? A 4-year pilot degree might be one way to go. Sure, we'll have to beat back the invaders, but it's nonetheless something we need to think about. Or are there other roles and paths forward in lieu of that, or in addition to that? So those two things, Madam Chair, I thought were worthy of discussion in those minutes, and minutes were very good, very interesting reading, and thanks to Trish for putting those together. But I did want us to be thinking about some of those things. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, can we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move approval of the minutes of July 24.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Abstain, I wasn't present.
Okay. All right, we're on to The action items. Financial report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, President Rowley. Here to report the information in your packets related to the financial report for the end of July 2019. And as you can see in your packet, the college had $9.2 million in its operating account. And that's compared to 7.6 in the prior year. That's a $1.6 million improvement from July to July. Tuition and fees revenues down 3% and total out to be $2.8 million. And that has been a decrease of $94,000 to the prior FY19. And so it's nice to see that that's flattening off compared to last year, where we saw a pretty drastic decline in tuition and fees. You'll see that in the detail of the financial report that there's no activity in the local appropriations account in July because those receipts are accrued back to the prior fiscal year. State appropriations revenue totals out to be about $1 million, and that's an increase of 13% and an amount of $117,000. Total ING revenues, when you combine them all, they're up by $9,000, so I would say that's flat from year to year. And they total out to be about $3.8 million. On the expense side, expenses are up slightly by $95,000, up by 6%, in total $1.6 million to the prior July. If you look at compensation on its own, it's up by 7%, up by $104,000, and total out to be $1.5 million. As of the end of July, about 73% of our revenues came from tuition and fees, and 27% came from state appropriations, as we haven't received local mill levy revenues at that point in time. Just a few other things to point out to you, that in the detail of the financial report, under public service, you'll see that the conference center has net gain of $9,000. Kids Campus has a net gain of $33,000. And then we have an amount of $154,000 that's in the positive for public service. And at this point in the year, we have about $198,000 in positive gain in the public service fund. So that's really good news, especially with the Kids Campus funding. The reason why there's so much money, as I mentioned, the $154,000, is we got a special RPSP during the legislative session, and that comes into the general fund but gets transferred into public service. So if you look at auxiliary.
Which one was that?
Oh,
The RPSP.
that was the firstborn program, RPSP.
The firstborn, okay.
Yeah, firstborn. And then our auxiliaries fund, bookstore, and food service have a total net gain of $19,000. $19,860. And the most important thing that I wanted to just share with you is that as we've talked about cash improvement throughout the past year or 2 years, we did transfer funds into the plant fund. And if you look at the plant fund, there will be a total at the bottom of the page, and currently we have about, keep going down, yeah, there you go. See that number? It's like light gray. That's our plant fund reserve amount, $6.5 million in the plant fund reserve, and that's something really that makes my heart smile, because it used to be like $750,000 at one point. So We're on our way to reaching our target and goal of about $7.8 million, which is 3 months of payroll. And we've had discussions. We did meet with the Financial Review Committee, and there was concern for sure about recession and trade wars and kind of national global economics, where things are really pointed in the direction of not too good for the economy. And questions surfaced as to what do you think will happen? What do we need to do? I mean, nobody really knows. It's likely that something may happen in the next 2 to 5 years. It looks like that will happen, but we don't know when. The good news is we have the reserve that we've been focused on shoring up to make sure that we're prepared to weather the storm if things go unexpected. So with that, that's the financial report, and I can stand for any questions.
Questions? So on the receivables with the PTAP at 120 days,
Yes, the PTAP is one of those, it's really a matter of when we submit our bills and when they're able to reimburse us. And I believe they are reimbursing us quarterly. So I think that we've received about, let's see here, PTAP. I think we actually received that 119.
okay.
In between the time this report was made and by now that I'm meeting with you all.
and why are literacy volunteers so far behind?
I don't know. They don't usually have outstanding receivables, so I'll have to look into that. But usually they're good about those reimbursements.
All righty, anything else? How about a motion to approve the financials?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The HED quarterly report,
Yes, this
very informative report that tells absolutely nothing.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have the SGA budget. That's an important one.
Hi, Madam Chair, members of the board, President Rowley. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present the Student Government Association allocation of budget. My name is Mary Elias, and I am the Student Government Advisor. And today I have with me our SGA Treasurer, Melissa Garcia.
Hi.
Can't see. Okay, so what we like to propose is the allocation of the budget and how student government will be using their funds. First of all, we kind of put this in 5 different sections. So the first section is the executive budget, and this consists of the following. The Student Government Fall Conference, and that's when we usually go to Los Angeles to the National American Student Government Association. It kind of gives us best practices of what's going on with the colleges and universities, and we're modeling a lot of that to kind of consist of our constitution, how we should run our meetings, how we're changing the meeting structures from the House of Representatives to a Senate Council. So this is where we kind of get all their information on how it's done across the country. So they've allocated $7,000 for that. That's to include the hotel, the registration fees, flights, et cetera.
Now, how many people get to go to that?
This year, there's 6 of them going. There's going to be the 4 executive teams members, the sergeant of arms, because we have a new position, so that way they can meet with other sergeant of arms and how they do it, so they can really see what that role encompasses, and they can also allow them an opportunity to do some networking. And myself. The next
There's
item.
6 plus you?
No, that includes me, ma'am. The next item is campaigning funds, because this was also suggested to us from the SGA, ASGA, was we should allocate at least $500. So when the next team is starting to come in, like in February, March, and they want to start running a campaign, they have a little bit of funds for flyers and posters and candy and different things for their campaign. So we allocated $500 for that. The next item is the SGA payroll, which consists of the executive team pay, the senator's pay. We also looked at having a program assistant, which would be consisting of say for example, Melissa here has finished her term and she's still continuing here, and she could come and mentor the next team. So we have always a continuum of awesomeness going on. So we have continuous training. And then also the sergeant of arms. And the breakdown of that pay is on page 3. The next section is office supplies. So supplies would consist of promotional items, business cards, as Ian mentioned earlier. They give out a whole bunch of them so they can really give around to campuses, to the students, and then also around different colleges that we go to, like to Los Angeles. And when we went recently, a couple weeks ago, to CNM, to a leadership summit, Ian was able to network with the president there and SGA, so that's what's really helpful. Additionally, we allocated $2,000 to uniforms. As you can see, they're looking really sharp, or we're looking sharp. So we kind of get a couple shirts and our blazers, and they really help us stand out and be more professional when we doing presentations. Next item is $7,200 for food. And sometimes we had them at student government meetings. So what we're trying to do now is we're having the meetings once a month. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take some meetings out to the students. So basically that's saying is that in Campus Center on Wednesdays, student government will be out there and saying, you know, we're going to have hot dog Wednesdays, student pay $1, student government will pay the other $1.50. So hopefully we can do very targeted and specific one-on-ones with students that usually do not come to student government meetings. So next section is hosting. And this is basically what student government kind of sponsors, basically on a rotating cycle. So the first one is the Student Leadership Conference, and that is usually leaders to leaders conferences, and where we invite different colleges and high school students to come to this college, and our leadership groups kind of facilitate and do the workshops for the other students that can participate. So it's a really good opportunity for our leaders of like student government and student ambassadors to do workshops and help recruit. That helps with recruitment, retention of our students, and to recruit new people coming in to say, hey, I want to be a leader. So it's amazing to see that peer-to-peer mentoring going on. Next is their annual student government spring event. This year they want to do a festival. I don't know if it's going to be a carnival or what. They still haven't gotten to the particulars yet, so they've allocated $6,500 for that. The next one is a club fund request. So what they've looked at is the first 9 clubs, or we're trying to cover at least 9 clubs, to $900 per for funding, to be $8,100. And with that, we also help them do a lot of fundraising, do some raffles, different ways for them to raise some money, for them to go to conferences or hold events here on campus. And for example, the Clay Club, the Glass Club, different events that are on campus. We also help them with like the fashion show that they have down at the Hilton. They sponsor that as well with some funding. The next item that this year, they're going to be giving $500 to students helping students, and that will go to the foundation. Next item is a transfer to student activities. According to policy 2.1, the money for the clubs, once they become an established club, they should be getting about $400. So according to policy, what was happening was student government was giving it directly to the clubs, and that wasn't in compliance with policy. So what we're doing now is we're going to transfer it from student government to student activities, which will then pay it to the clubs. And so we're looking about to fund at least a minimum of 20 clubs. Right now, we currently have about 18, and about 4 or 5 new clubs have wanted to be established. So this might change slightly. But it's very thrilling to see that new clubs are coming on campus. They want to do weightlifting, basketball, single parents, poetry, different ones. So it's really nice and exciting. This next one is new. Is called, we're going to move some funds, or we're going to set aside, I shouldn't say move, we're going to set aside $6,801 to be used in sense if we have to use it through student activities. For example, any clubs that, or any members or just departments that want to come and say, we need some help funding things, whether it's through like a Black History Month, Veterans Resources need some help doing their Veterans Day. There's some of these funds are set aside to use at that discretion. So total is $69,129 that will be allocated to a student government. This comes from the $1.50 that the student pays on their fees. $1 goes to student government, 50 cents goes to student activities. So you see in the below chart is the percentage breakdown. The $69,129 is allocated to student government, while $34,513 will be allocated to student activities. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to present to you. This is, I will stand for questions now.
Yes, Martha?
Can you tell us some of the clubs that, you said you had 18? What are some of the clubs that you?
Some of the clubs is we have the clay, sculpture, glass, film, figure club, fashion, Smiles, which is the dental program, respiratory program, hospitality and culinary. We have the Veterans Club that's coming back, and I can't even think of anybody else. No, yes, nursing. There's a lot of different clubs, and there's a big variety. Oh, we have a lot of organizations as well. We have a SACNIS. Please don't ask me what it stands for. It's for science. I don't know. I'm sorry. And there's Toastmasters, and then there's the solar, aquaponics, mycology, different ones like that in different areas.
So are they mostly people in those programs, or do they cross, for example, if I were studying general studies and I wanted to join the aquaponics club, would I do that, or is that mostly the people who are in the aquaponics program?
It's kind of both, but some of them are very specific to their program of study, where we're trying to work on that to kind of have them be a little bit more inclusive of a different, like a non-traditional student or literature person wanting to come into aquaponics and stuff. So we're really working on that to try to get them to be a little bit more diverse and open.
Interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Great, okay, this is an action item.
I move approval of the student SGA budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, our Open Meetings Act. Who's doing that? Is that you?
Yes, if I
Okay.
can find it. Let's see.
It's an E. Page E30.
Thank you. Okay, so annually, we're required to adopt an open meetings resolution pursuant to the Open Meetings Act from the New Mexico Code. The act that we have here before you is basically the same act that we've followed for as long as anybody that I know can remember. It does appear that we do need to make a change to the agenda that we're presenting for the work sessions to be compliant with the policy that is proposed right here. I don't think that there's anything extraordinary in here other than that, so it does require your approval.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
one question, and we never mention it, and so I assume it's in the statutes, but, we permit participation, telephonic participation. We don't address proxy participation by proxies.
I don't believe proxy is not enabled by the statute.
Yeah.
That was my question. Do you know that for sure? Because
Yes.
because we don't ever mention it, and I know most boards and commissions don't permit proxy.
Right. And it's statutorily, it's not.
Well, and I wondered about that because I've attended a lot of meetings like the Water Trust Board meetings and the New Mexico Finance Authority meetings, and a great number of the members of those meetings are cabinet secretaries, and half of them don't show up.
Right.
And they have
They
some.
send a rep.
They send a rep,
Yeah.
which is a proxy. So, by statute, the cabinet secretary of XYZ is a member. So I always wondered how.
But remember, we have a separate statute just for community colleges.
Okay, and so in that statute, it doesn't allow proxies?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move approval of the open meetings resolution.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, okay. The RPSPs.
Big money.
Okay. Yash is going to present those for us.
Okay.
Actually, I'm bringing Ann Black, Director of Grants, to present this to you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the board, President Rowley, we have 9 RPSP applications going to the Higher Education Department requesting your approval. Go down. Okay.
Just
So-
hit the high points of each one.
Okay, great. So the first 3 applications are reoccurring applications. RPSB's been funding the SBDC for about 31 years. The next one is nursing expansion, and we are asking for additional funds in that RPSP to add another LPN cohort. So we're asking for additional funds above last year's application.
So what was last year's?
That would fund another faculty member. Last year, do you remember, Yash? It was,
Jenny knows.
she'll know. For nursing expansion.
275,000, or 250,000, I think. Yeah, 250, because we had a cut from the year before.
So we're asking for 229,000 additional? That's more than LPN.
Yes, can I clarify that? Actually, what we're asking for are 2 new positions. One would be a 9-month nursing faculty position. The second would be a 12-month clinical coordinator position to support the LPN program and potentially expand. But also, nursing is the only program right now, well, one of 2 programs in my school that does not have a clinical coordinator. And with approximately 100 now, 50, 60 students, we feel like it's time that they deserve that. And this seems to be the year to ask.
Okay. I'm going to have more questions on that, but go on.
So the third one on the list is firstborn, and we're asking for the same amount of money that we were awarded last year. And the fourth one is teacher education, and that's a new RPSB request for this year. And that is to expand, it's for 2 faculty member positions. One to expand our special education teaching, and one for early childhood education. The fifth one on the list is the shared services technology project. And this is a request that's going in with other colleges to update our ERP system.
The banner?
The banner
New
system.
banner?
Yeah, or whatever the
Yeah,
new system will
right.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New banner.
The next one is our EMS request, and that's for a pilot program to provide mental health resiliency for EMS students.
So this is an expansion?
No.
This is the existing amount? This is
new.
This is new.
New, yes.
Okay.
The next one is automotive technologies. We were funded, I believe, 2 years ago through RPSB, but not last year for automotive. And that's for a couple pieces of equipment for automotive trainers. The next one is commercial food production. And this is a project that I believe we're collaborating with Northern New Mexico College on. And this is to help us assist and promote local food producers.
Is this new?
And this is brand new. And in collaboration with our controlled agriculture program. And then the last one is for instructional equipment for a new distributed energy program.
So this is new too?
Yes. So just the top 3, SBDC, nursing, and firstborn, are reoccurring or were funded last year.
Okay. Okay, questions?
Could you just tell me what this research and public service projects, that whole package, what is it? Who's funding these?
Sure. I think I'll try to explain. It's a little bit of a mystery to me as well.
Okay. I like mysteries.
You want to go for it? Okay. Okay. So this is a funding source that goes to the New Mexico Higher Education Department, and it funds a variety of activities at all of the higher education institutions in New Mexico, from sports to research to public service, which might be, for instance, our kids' campus, may be considered a public service. So wide variety of different projects go here. It's in many cases, our requests do not get recommended for funding by HED. But by going through the RPSB project, that allows us to then go to the legislature and ask for line item funding for these items. So we expect that not all of these will be recommended for funding by HED, but we need to go through this process in order to go directly to the legislature. Did I answer?
That was very good.
Thank you.
And in some cases, like the firstborn, it might just get recommended as well. So it depends on the situation and what's going on.
So HED is they're the kind of agency that handles the applications?
Yes, and also the executive branch develops their own budget, and then the legislative branch develops their own budget. So this is part of that process.
So is any of this HED money, or does it all goes to the legislature with HED approval or not?
So HED will decide which ones of these they want to put in their request. And then it can appear in the governor's budget, and then the legislature does their own budget, and then the two budgets get mingled or not.
So
When the session starts.
So some of the requests some of the proposals that HED does not approve can still go to the legislature?
Like we can do a bill and still ask for more money.
But there is presumably advantage to having HED approval.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board Member Gamble, yes. The legislators like to see that we've actually gone through the process rather than going to them directly. And this shows that we're actually trying to go through the process and trying to go through one pathways before we're asking them for some additional assistance.
And we've had relatively good success?
Yes, I think our local legislative representatives are very supportive of the college. We're very grateful for that. And so going through this process adds to the credibility of the process and how serious we are about our intentions.
Madam Chair, members of the committee. Can I sit down? Thank you. Okay. President Rowley, just to give you an example, for the last 10 years since I've been here, we've always received nursing expansion funds. And we've never really, we do the paperwork, but typically we have not come to you all for approval because it's been an automatic. So the only reason, going through the process. Right, right. But it's never been turned away for the last 10 years for nursing.
The recurring.
The recurring.
Right.
And the reason that we are here requesting is because we're asking for an increase in what we normally receive.
Generally, once it's recurring, it stays in the system.
Right.
So Jenny, just stay there a second. Do you want to do any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Okay, because I have quite a few, so.
Okay, all right. I'll be short, so then we can go to Linda for that. So first of all, this is, we learn something every day. I did not realize that SBDC got all their funding through the RPSP program and has done that for that many years, for 30 some odd years with us. So I know they're obviously a longstanding program and have great value in the state of New Mexico, working with our small businesses and entrepreneurs. But I didn't realize that this is how they had to get their funding every year, which is very interesting that it's not a normal part of the process, that it's always through RPSP. So we learn something new every day. That's my only comment. And then a couple of other questions. So the teacher education expansion, I obviously understand the rationale for that with Yazzie Martinez and the reforms that New Mexico is making in terms of K through 12 education. So my question is, we talk about hiring additional faculty. Do we have additional students? Do we have anyone on the waiting list? Because what I have heard anecdotally is part of the problem is not that we don't have capacity at our schools to educate teachers, but we have no candidates who actually want to be teachers in the future. And does this proposal think through that issue as well?
Yes, Member Keith. We have over 500 students in the teacher education program. At one point in time, we did have 4 full-time faculty members in the program. At this point in time, we only have 2. And so the rest of the coursework is being taught by adjunct faculty. And so, but we do expect, we do want to expand our capacity as well as strengthen our program as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Anne was accurate. Madam Chair, President Rowley, Member Keith, members. Absolutely what she said. But the truth is we have been very short in this particular area, and there is a bit of an opportunity here in this particular project with the faculty, we will also be addressing the early childhood need. We do not have anyone there at all, as well as building on our capacity for site apprenticeship, if you will, for lack of a better word. So we're really growing it in a way that hasn't been done. If we talk about it politically, it has been very skimped upon in the last 8 years, and there's a real opportunity here for us to build that. And the way that this has been put together is almost, it would be an absolute turnaround from what we've been doing in teacher prep and why people have really not been going to the field. So it's something that will look more attractive and actually give people who have not been attracted to the field more recently. But as Ann stated, we do have people who are wanting to get in, particularly through alternative licensure, but through a practicum based where they can actually get more hands-on and put more qualified people in the classroom. We are at, and I'm forgetting the percentage and I apologize, but it's over 50% in the state starting the school year with substitute teachers, which has been in the media. So this really starts to take that and put more qualified people in as they get their training. I hope that helps.
So what I hear us saying is that our proposal is a little bit more about quality than it is about quantity.
Absolutely, hugely. That's a great way to put it. Thank you. But we do have the quantity as well.
And on Kathy's point, and you mentioned something, what we heard from the superintendent of Santa Fe is that some of our students are coming out and they don't have student teaching experience, and that really impacts the ability for that person to be successful in the classroom. So we're thinking about doing.
Madam Chair, absolutely.
So that would be part of this.
In the last just 2 years, this will be a big part of that. In the last 2 years, there have been teachers placed in classrooms who have no teaching experience and no real plan for doing so. The previous administration actually had a model that allowed someone with a baccalaureate degree and maybe a pulse to actually be in the classroom. So this is actually expecting that they have a certain amount of pedagogy under their belt and understand teaching and learning, which did not happen in the last 2 years, sincerely.
But there will be actual teacher experience in the classroom as
and giving them an experience in the
or whatever
pedagogy.
you call
Absolutely. And tying those together, that's what this is modeled to do.
So Kathy, more?
No, those were my only.
That's what I meant, the apprenticeship, yeah.
Okay, so on to nursing. So Jenny, aren't you part of this workforce group that's looking at the shortage of nurses?
Yes, Madam Chair, both to Terry too.
Both of you are, okay.
Yes.
So I was under the impression that part of the workforce group's recommendation is going to be to expand all the schools of nursing so that we can increase the number of slots so that in 2 to 3 years we can actually have some more nurses in the field.
So that is the eventual goal. I don't know that that can be implemented that quickly, honestly, or that seamlessly without taking into consideration, because this is part of the workforce group, taking into consideration clinical placement for students or replacement for clinical experience, maybe possibly in the simulation labs, as well as allowing for, so right now we share Santa Fe with Northern New Mexico College and Luna Community College. So for those clinical placements, we share that. So if we all three increase our enrollment, we are significantly decreasing our clinical availability. That becomes...
On that point?
Yes.
So are we doing nighttime clinicals, weekend clinicals, holiday clinicals?
So we are definitely doing weekend clinicals. I do not have anybody who is willing to do night clinicals. That is not something that, and while I have some clinical facilities, not all, who are willing to take swing shift and night shift students, it's not, I do not have instructors who are willing to proctor students at those times.
And is that because we can't pay them enough?
Yes, ma'am.
So can part of this money not be to pay people to
So under the collective bargaining agreement, I've been told that I am not allowed to augment anybody's pay, but
And often we pay the nurses in the facility to be is that not true?
No.
We never pay nurses in the facility?
Not nurses who are there working. So we pay nurses who work for facilities to be clinical instructors. They're
Right.
two separate things.
To be clinical instructors in that facility.
Or any facility. It's not specific to, it's not facility specific.
Yeah,
It
but
doesn't
that
have
could-
to be.
That would be an adjunct person, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Well, they're not part of the union.
So if this is, it is.
Okay, maybe this is not a discussion.
This
for
is,
right
yeah.
now.
I mean, we
Let's-
can.
You know, we have to address this shortage, and we have to do it with collaboration with our hospitals. And I mean, I know you all know this, and they have to pony up so that they have more skin in the game by, you know, if we need to pay their nurses to be our proctors,
That is
then
part of the
that is-
discussion.
That is what has to happen.
Absolutely.
And to say, and I know this is not you, but to say, well, we can't address this in the next year, if we don't start addressing it in the next year by adding more nurses and more students into our schools of nursing, so we'll have 5,000 vacancies.
So we are addressing the first part by adding the LPNs.
Right.
So it's something that we're definitely doing.
And how big will that cohort be?
14.
14.
Mm-hmm. You met him at a board meeting?
Yeah.
Here? Yeah. It's not, so unfortunately for clinical oversight, the Board of Nursing, New Mexico Board of Nursing requires 8 to 1. So I have to have a clinical instructor for every 8 students. That is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
So that ends up dividing my faculty to where they're working and what they're doing, whether it's adjunct or full-time.
Chair Siegel, members of the committee, President Rowley. So we are starting to address the need for more faculty. And so this is the first step for us to ask for 1 9-month faculty and a 12-month faculty. As President Rowley can tell you, we are understaffed for the number of students that we have. We use a large number of adjuncts to support our 6 full-time nursing faculty. So this is part of the progress. And so we can't address it all at once, but I think this is going to help tremendously. And with these 2 additions, we would be able to add an additional cohort of 8.
Of 8 more RNs?
Yes.
And then the 14 LPNs?
Yes.
Another cohort of 14 LPNs? Or just the one we?
So it would be another cohort of eligible students. I think that you have to understand what's available in the high schools and who are eligible to be able. So we would take another cohort of up to 16 because that's manageable. It's not something that would require more than 1 full-time faculty member. It does require several adjuncts to help support that, but it is something that seems manageable for LPN specifically. When she's talking about 8, that would be 8 per application cycle, so it'd be 16 a year. Yeah.
All right, on to the EMTs.
Well, just additional, it seems that very quickly we get into a very complex series of issues, and it would seem to me that we have heard on a number of occasions the need for nurses, LPNs, community nurses out there, and we talk about the capacity limitations that we have in here. It seems we need a little more concentrated focus on a longer term scale to plan for what do we have to be doing over the next 10 years. We should have some kind of plan, and some people should be forming that.
part of the task force that we are participating in.
Supposedly that task force is going to be.
And is that a regional task force or
Statewide.
statewide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, maybe that would be real good if you could come back to the board with something the board can do to support that plan here.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to report on any task force activities.
And to look for things that we can contribute to that, rather than just being passive observers of what's happening.
But I don't think we're being passive because we are trying to add more slots.
Right, right,
Our nursing program, yes.
right. But we have to give them more money.
Right. And if we can't get it from the state, what are we gonna do?
That's right.
Okay, so on EMS.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
on the nursing, not that fast.
Well, no.
Can you use travelers for the mentors?
Oh.
Nurses hate the word. I don't care.
No, actually, for nursing education, they need to be licensed in the state, by the state of New Mexico.
And travelers don't need to be licensed?
Travelers are licensed outside as a compact licensure, so that becomes a little, you have to have a very small percentage. You cannot have a large percentage of out-of-state licensed nurses teaching your students. It becomes very tricky. It's not an easy bring-in travelers to be able to do that.
Plus you have to pay them a whole lot
Well,
more money.
Well, I think our problem right now is not pay, our problem is people. And so we need to get people who are trained. I thought, and maybe that was in some other states, that there was reciprocal legislation.
There is reciprocity, not specifically for nursing education. Nursing education is so the oversight of nursing education bodies is done by the Board of Nursing specifically, and they have their own rules and regulations we have to follow. The reciprocity for licensing is for practicing nurses working in hospitals and different healthcare facilities, not specific to nursing education.
And they can't be, suppose they have, 10% of their time is mentoring. Are they then considered to be, in education?
So mentoring or precepting is a different piece, and that is something that it tends to be regulated by each facility which they work. So we have facilities where only nurses who have been trained to precept or trained to be mentors are allowed to actually do that in their facility. So it really depends on our clinical partners as well as the nurses' availability as well as their willingness to be preceptors.
And what's the difference between a preceptor and a mentor and a clinician?
So a clinical instructor actually has oversight of 8 students. They have to be there with the students, and they tend to be adjuncts. Our full-time faculty, each of our full-time faculty members does have a clinical assignment. Now, for preceptors or mentors, they do not get paid. So if we assign a nursing student to a preceptor or a mentor, it is an agreement with the clinical facility that they are willing to do that. So it is not something that they are in any way are paid to do unless their facility themselves augments their pay. But that is not something that we pay for on top of our clinical instructors.
And so that type of person who would not be paid cannot replace the clinical instructor.
No, sir.
And the clinical instructor has to be on site.
Yes.
While those student
Yes.
nurses are doing their clinicals.
Yes.
And you can't get travelers, huh?
So I can use travelers as preceptors or as mentors, absolutely.
But they're not going to do it for free, that's for sure. Yeah, but I'm thinking of clinical instructors. I mean, does the clinical instructor have to also be a classroom instructor, or can it be?
Not at all.
can be just on site.
Absolutely.
But
And
you're,
we
s-
do that frequently.
but you're saying because of the nursing board, it's,
Travelers, it's dependent on where their home state, so their state of residence, that is dependent, that is where their home license is. So yes,
so
it
it's,
does have an impact.
so you could maybe do it if you didn't tell anybody. Or if-
Sorry, that's not what I would do. So no, I apologize. Yeah, no.
Okay,
I'm
I
not
don't know.
opposed.
Maybe
at
we need to
all.
have some dialogue with the nursing board.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, you know, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step.
Okay, so, any other questions? Okay.
No, that's,
So EMS.
Quickly.
So, when I was looking at the numbers, we have a surplus of EMS providers in Santa Fe. No?
Not
That's-
really, no. There's roughly 100 open jobs right now between Albuquerque and Santa Fe for paramedics alone.
But how many are in Santa Fe?
Of those jobs, I can't answer that specific question because the breakdown of the way the data comes is not that specific. But I know that a number of the people who are filling the jobs in Albuquerque live in Santa Fe. So we draw students from as far south as Las Lunas and as far north as Raton. And there's a significant number of open EMS jobs. The data that we use, unfortunately, the data that we receive from the EMSI data, they stole my department's name. Their data is not.
Confusing to me.
Their data is not particularly accurate when it comes to the number of EMT and paramedic positions that are open.
So there's a need for this provider, the mental health.
100%, yeah.
Well, is this the community health?
No, so what we're specifically attempting to address is the reality that EMTs and paramedics suffer PTSD and suicidality at 10 times, and actually successful suicide attempts at over 10 times the national average. We're also attempting to address in our students that we have about a 30% or so attrition rate every semester with our EMT and AEMT cohorts. It's a little bit lower with our paramedic cohorts. And we've realized that we don't actually have any support, any efficient support for our students who are seeing particularly tragic events. The two examples are we had a student who was at a clinical rotation when they were leaving and a 17-year-old who had been shot was driven into the ER. The ER went on lockdown. The 17-year-old didn't survive. She was stuck at the clinical facility for an extra 3+ hours. And the only reason we knew about it is because she emailed our clinical coordinator to say, I might be late for class tomorrow. The second one is during our orientation shift for an EMT student, so their first exposure to the medical environment, they saw, didn't participate in, but saw a 3-year-old who was in cardiac arrest from child abuse. And she nearly quit the program. And we don't have great resources in our program or in our profession to support providers who are dealing with stuff like that.
Okay, so this is more oriented to the existing providers,
This is oriented to our students.
to the students.
We're going to provide our students with an opportunity to have counseling appointments set up as a clinical rotation, as well as an on-call counseling service that is specific to public safety. And we're hoping to do, we're not hoping to, if we get funded, we will do pre and post surveys to understand the attitudes towards mental health care, which in our profession are incredibly poor, even though we have incredibly high rates of need. So we're hoping to, by addressing our students, by gathering this data, create a model that can be successfully implemented across New Mexico and then potentially across the country.
Okay, great. All right,
question?
yes?
Excuse me. Is there any ability to to interact with this need with Santa Fe Community College's family counseling mental health program. We have a program in place for employees and students that is actually quite effective. You call in, they assign you a coordinating person, and that person assigns you to local clinical counselors who are certified and for some of these things that you're talking about. And that program's been in place at least 2 years.
Vice Chair Sullivan, that program's only for employees, unfortunately. It is a great program. Students do not have access to those services.
Okay, I thought that was available to students. Well, maybe we need to think about that, because it seems like if you're not funded, and I know this is a wish list, not a guarantee list, that we might look into what the cost of that is, because I think it's a fairly cost-effective and an effective program.
That's a really good suggestion. We actually have a committee, the Student Wellness Committee, that's actually looking at that. Janelle Johnson came and spoke to you all, I believe, not that long ago, and I'm on that committee with her, and we are looking at how we can try to meet the unmet mental health needs for our students, and we'll look into that for sure with Alicia in HR.
If I may, we're also, I've been in conversations with local resources through Krista St. Vincent and what they have for their employee assistance program. The reason we're hoping to be funded, as you said, it's a wish list, not a guarantee list. I know that because I've asked for this to be funded 3 different times already, and it hasn't yet been funded. It will be this time, though. One of the reasons we're looking specifically to work with the folks out of Albuquerque from the Public Safety Psychology Group is because they have a background in public safety, and they have a background in dealing specifically with the types of vicarious trauma and secondary trauma that are experienced by EMTs and paramedics and police officers and firefighters. What we've found, not locally so much, but in other places, is that counseling services without that specific type of background have a very difficult time reaching our target population. And we've done work with our outreach to our counseling services with some effectiveness. So the 2 students I mentioned earlier, we referred them to our counseling services. They both stuck with our program and completed. I don't know that that would have been true without their intervention. But nobody on our counseling service, well, number one, from what I understand, they're incredibly busy. And number 2, they don't have the background. And so there's a language and a culture and an ethos that when you're able to connect to students with that, it has a much greater impact.
Makes sense. Okay. Anything else? Can we have a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all for.
The wish list is approved.
Yes, and bless it. Okay, infrastructure, energy. Now you can just hit the high points since we went through this in the work session. Another note.
Chairman, members of the board, President Rowley, thank you all for allowing us to present this before you.
Do we have a choice?
Well, not necessarily. This was covered briefly and in our work session, and so we'll cover this briefly and be concise on our presentation. This project is the Infrastructure Energy Efficiency Upgrades and Improvements, or referred to as an Energy Savings Performance Contract capital project. This project has been in the accumulation, has taken a accumulation of about 3 years to get to this point. I'll go briefly over the actual transmittal sheets. These sheets, if approved by the board, These sheets will also they've been submitted to our higher education department, and we look forward to a hearing September 11th for higher ed approval. This particular project is for, the general nature of this project is the renewal and replacement of critical infrastructure, utilities, and energy assets for Santa Fe Community College. I won't go into the description of work. You have that before you, and it is about 2.5 pages of detailed equipment and infrastructure that's going to be replaced by this project. Going through the submittal forms, I'm going to jump to the budget sheet, which happens to be page 7. The actual total construction cost for this project is $6,689,494. On the next page, we include the architectural engineering, the project administration, surveys, in this case commissioning, for a total project cost of $8,126,163. This project is to be funded by our, and the leverage funding will come from our general obligation bond 2018, and we're looking to obtain future financing from New Mexico Finance Authority for a balance of $5,284,000, again for a total project cost of $8,126,163. There's a number of attachments to this project that are all required by the state. I won't go through those attachments. They do include the application of approval for issuance of subordinate lien system revenue bonds to finance this project. As I mentioned, that's going to be coordinated by Nick and others through the New Mexico Finance Authority. We did receive a certification of this project by New Mexico Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department. We also got approval, verbal and email approval from New Mexico Higher Education Secretary to proceed forward with this project. With that, we'll sit for any questions that you may have. And I do have Mr. Bill Kipnis to my right. He's a senior member of Siemens and who is also representing this project and will coordinate the construction activities of this project.
Okay.
We're asking for approval of this project so we can move forward to higher education for approval as well.
Any questions? Jack?
Quick question. Our solar array on the roof and our other one out in the field, what's the status of that? How long are they going to last? Is there any replacements included in this of those panels?
Members of the board, Vice Chair, Mr.
No, that's my question.
Yes, we do have a number of solar attributes and energy assets on this campus. The larger two being a 1.5 megawatt photovoltaic array system. It's completely operational. It's working to its 100% capacity. And since its inception of the final completion of construction, which was in the winter of 2014, we've experienced about once it became 100% operational, it took about 3 months to get 100% operational. We were working the bugs out and had a couple of inverters that failed on us at the initial installation. We've seen from about $250,000 to $300,000 a year savings from those assets. They're completely functional. We have a 14.3 kilowatt photovoltaic array system at the greenhouse that is going to be transformed to be an energy asset for the nanogrid of the greenhouse. It's totally functional. We do have other energy assets at the Higher Education Center. All of our energy assets with regards to photovoltaics and solar are completely functional, and we don't intend to add any future assets.
Okay, I'm talking about the old ones, not the new ones at the greenhouse. I'm talking the ones that are on the roof of the tech.
Those are solar thermal systems. They're not photovoltaic systems. They're solar thermal systems, and yes, they're completely functional. That's how we heat and cool that trade.
Right, I understand. But this evaluation by Siemens did not include those.
The evaluation by Siemens looked at all of our equipment, and it looked at those equipments that either were needing renewal or replacement, and those systems are still operational, so we will not.
Those were okay.
Yeah.
What about the array out in the field?
That's the 1.5 photovoltaic megawatt array, and that's completely functional and is operating at 100% capacity, and we're very satisfied with it.
Okay, so,
We will be adding a battery system to that system, yes.
so none of those Siemens fields are ready for replacement?
No, they're not ready, they're not in need of replacement, and we don't expect to replace those for another 10, 15 years, but I'll let Siemens answer that as well.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Vice Chair Sullivan, Chair Siegel, President Rowley, members of the board. We did evaluate all of those systems. We looked at their performance history and their current performance and recommended that you not need to invest further in them at this time or expand them at this time. The focus of the project then became how to optimize them, how to get more out of your existing investment rather than add to that solar. So to do that, we, with our infrastructure improvements to the campus, are able to integrate that large solar array into the campus grid in a way that provides next generation energy planning curriculum and resiliency to the campus, so that if power goes out, which it does frequently, the solar arrays that you've already invested in are now able to provide you resiliency and interact with a battery and a microgrid controller for the first time.
Even at night?
Yes, the batteries will function perfectly at night.
For how long?
Well, the duration of the resiliency will depend on the load at the time. So let's say, for example, it's early at night and you're, you have some night classes going on. The battery will provide you resiliency for less time than when the campus is empty.
1 hour? 2 hours?
Well, the microgrid in total is your photovoltaics, your battery, and most importantly, the replacement of your old and not very clean diesel generator with a new generation natural gas generator. So in combination with the gas generator, the battery will be able to keep you in operation in perpetuity, depending on your load at the time.
Okay, but basically you've got the gas generator backing up the microgrid if it goes down. Okay.
Well, we have a microgrid controller, which is a brain that makes a determination of how to provide you energy depending on what's going on, which is quite fascinating. And it'll make that decision based on lowest cost, based on lowest carbon emissions, or other factors that you, as the operators, tell it how you want to operate the campus.
Okay, I feel better knowing that we have the gas generator.
Thank you.
Not that what you're doing is not a great thing, but, when in doubt, turn on the gas heat.
Okay, any other questions?
I move approval.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have one more. The bonds, the financing of this endeavor. And we discussed this briefly too.
Yes, Madam Chair, board members, President Rowley, this really is just the submittal forms to HED that are required. The board has already approved essentially working with NMFA to issue $6 million of bonds. Last month, the board did grant approval through a resolution to issue up to $6 million and make an application to NMFA for those funds. And this is just basically, initially, we had combined the financing and the project together, but HED asked us to split them out. And so ultimately, this is the financing of essentially $5,510,000 in principal of bonds that we would get and match with state GOB funds that Henry mentioned. Really, the financing is kind of in the works right now, working with NMFA on the particulars, but we're looking at an overall interest rate for these bonds of 2.9%. And so I think that that's a relatively good rate for these bonds. What else? They would be revenue bonds, so we would be pledging system-wide revenues of SFCC to basically back up the bonds and be available for servicing the debt on them. Let me just get to another section here.
And for what period of time would it be?
Through August 2039. So,
I think we'll be gone.
yeah.
2039, I'll only be 99.
Yeah, so 20-year bond period. And so what we're looking at is in our pro forma savings that was based upon the IGA and the work that Bill and Siemens did on energy savings, the estimates, which are very conservative, I understand, are basically we will get about $9.4 million in savings to basically finance a total of $7.5 million of principal and debt. So our savings are higher than what we would be bonding out, and so the pro forma shows that we can actually, fund this with our energy savings and also at the same time renew a lot of equipment on campus that's much needed. And it's a very innovative way of being able to finance a project. I hope that with this project, we will be able to get the data that will prove and basically allow us to show the legislature and the governor's office that we are decreasing our carbon consumption, which is a requirement that the governor issued through an executive order to reduce emissions by 45%, I believe, by the year 2030. And this will help us get there. And also it's in alignment with the governor's executive order to be in alignment, I think, with the Paris Accord. So all of those initiatives, this will really show that we're making progress towards those efforts.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just a quick question on this.
Yes.
Timing. So we talked about earlier in the work session that once it's all approved and financing's in place, it's a 12 to 18-month project. But how long is it going to take us to get the financing through Finance Authority? And will it come back to us for approval, or is it done once it goes to NMFA and it's approved by then?
This is a pretty lengthy process, and we've been trying to expedite it as much as possible. The way it works is we have to get these forms in front of HED for the first approval stage is HED's approval. And then we'll need to, we have plans to be on the NMFA agenda after the HED approval in right around September 26th. And then we will be meeting with the State Board of Finance, I believe in October to do that.
That's actually a pretty fast process.
There's a lot of
Yes.
bureaucracies in place in this process, and we have to go to State Board of Finance. Normally, we don't, but it's a law that revenue bonds all go through State Board of Finance, and these boards only meet once a month. So we're trying to push it along as much as possible. There was discussion with Bill about expediting some of the process with State Board of Finance. However, I haven't been able to get in touch with the director there, so still trying to get communication with that individual so that we can see if we can, maybe expedite it even more.
Do they vote at that meeting where you present? Like at the
Yes, yeah.
NMFA?
Yeah, they'll approve it, yeah.
They'll vote right then, okay.
Yeah, so that's it.
Okay.
Incidentally, this type of funding for capital improvements is now a requirement of higher education, so they are requiring institutions to pursue energy savings performance contracts prior to asking for capital funding, so we're in line with state code in pursuing this type of project.
And does this have to come back to the board for approval, or once we get the financing in place and the approval from HED, where work can begin?
The answer is no, but I think that the performance energy contract that we put in place with Siemens, because of the college policy of construction projects, may have to come. I'm not exactly sure about that, but I think it will. So we may have to.
Another board meeting that we have to.
So are we working on that contract prior to the approvals?
Right now, we're working on it currently, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's have a motion.
I move we approve
Bond financing.
bond financing for the energy project.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Review of the Financial Review Committee? Review of an appointment,
That was just the information item that we talked
yes,
about.
okay, and the strategic plan proposed changes? These are new ones? Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, members of the board, President Rowley. So what you have in front of you is our proposed changes to our action plans for the next upcoming year. These changes were made in response to the feedback we received from our HLC peer reviewers. And so what you see, the first five categories are specifically in the strategic plan. You can see in some cases, some items are crossed out or changed, so we are addressing more of the peer reviewers' concerns directly. And then the salmon color at the end is something that doesn't really rise to the strategic planning level, but something we want to sort of keep in the front of our minds to make sure that we are at the best conditions when the peer reviewers come on campus in February of 2020. And I stand for questions.
Madam Chair, okay, I have a late in the evening question. So I don't see what's marked out.
Oh.
Am I missing that?
Okay, so on the left-hand side was sort of the goals we had for 2018, 2019. And then on the right-hand side is what we're proposing for this upcoming year. And so in some cases, some of the items in the 2018-19 is crossed out and updated on the right-hand side.
Okay.
And the salmon colored, what is that? Those are new?
Those are items that doesn't rise to the level of our strategic plan, but it's still important to us. So it's one of those things where you got to check off the box kind of items. For example, staffing capacity was a question that the peer reviewers had about how do you actually make sure that you have enough staff. One way we're planning to solve that is by demonstrating some peer comparison data and saying that based on this number of students, this number of staff, SFCC have an adequate level of staffing compared to the number of students we have.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Good thing you didn't present this earlier in the night. There would have been more questions. All right, no policies. Any comments from the board? I did want to talk about those revenue bonds for El Castillo and the impact that it will have on us.
Madam Chair, board members, President Rowley.
Thank you.
To update the board on where we stand with the El Castillo industrial revenue bonds that you've been reading about in the paper, our attorneys actually have been working with the city and subsequently with El Castillo attorneys to negotiate a payment in lieu of taxes, and they call them pilots. And so we basically have negotiated that El Castillo will pay 100% of the property taxes. And the handout that I just, that Trish just passed out is the language from the lease.
Is this with the first 6 years not paid?
No, if you read it, if you read the full language, the payment in lieu of taxes equal to 100% of the property tax abated will begin in the tax year 2019, which is this year, through 2048, every year. It's 100%, and it also goes on to say that the pilots will be payable regardless of whether the agreement of the lease is terminated or not. So that means to me that any property, any owner of that property, not necessarily El Castillo, but anybody who's on that property will be obligated to pay the PILT payment to SFCC. They'll pay it to the city of Santa Fe first, and then city of Santa Fe will pass it on to us every year.
We wouldn't go to the county?
No, it's through the city, actually.
Because it's the city bonds.
Yeah, that's correct. And they also included in this language Santa Fe Public Schools for the same thing.
So only the city and the county are screwed.
Yeah, depending on who you are.
Only the city and the county will not receive their tax dollars in this deal.
To the best of my knowledge, that is correct. Yeah.
So when did our attorneys negotiate this?
They had been working on it for, let's see here, right around July, I think. Yeah,
So they talked to you?
they did, yes.
And why is it only applicable for 30 years? I mean,
That's the term of the bonds.
yeah, but
Then they have to pay taxes again.
is that right? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yep.
Once it's,
Once the bonds are paid off, then they have to go back and pay taxes.
they go back and pay taxes? Okay.
So how was the community college fortunate enough to get these funds? Why? Why'd the city give them to us?
It's not the city.
Yeah, it's basically the corporation, so.
You know, it's sort of traditional to hold harmless the public schools, and I guess that we get to be included in that. When they do these industrial bonds where they, you don't have to pay taxes for, property taxes for X number of years.
That's correct. In theory, the educational institutions help to support those entities and those businesses. So I think that's why they're interested in doing the PILT payments or pilot payments.
Well, there's still benefit to the El Castillo because the purchasers of the bonds don't have to pay taxes either. So El Castillo may be paying basically a maintenance fee or whatever you want to call it, but whoever buys the bonds, those are tax-free. So that makes the bonds much more attractive to El Castillo. And that that difference, and I don't know what the total amount would be, between a taxable and a non-taxable bond, could well be the amount of this PLOT. I don't know if that's the case, but what I'm saying is that this is not a Christmas gift.
Oh, no.
Right. Yeah, ultimately, they use the revenues that the city or the county would receive, and they bond that out. And instead of El Castillo paying the local governments, they end up using those funds to pay off their debt. So,
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Next board meeting, 25th September. Okay. All right. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Second.
No. No.
Aye.
Second.
All right. All in favor, aye. Thank you.